I'm just a local nerd, but there's nothing I love more than using my theater arts degree to analyze comic book sales numbers. 2024 was an exciting year for the comic book industry, as it took a lot of big swings in an attempt to make back the pandemic losses it's still feeling today. With all the numbers in, I want to take a look at the top 10 best-selling comic book single issues for the year to see what worked and predict what trends we might see coming out of comic book publishers in the coming years. Disclaimer before I begin. Comics, like many other entertainment industries, are not very vocal with their sales numbers, unless they want to brag. So, I'm taking my sales numbers from whatever official numbers publishers put out. Comic Pop's 2024 retail survey, which compiles sales from 150 comic book stores, and numbers published by Popverse's editor-in-chief. This is to account for sales from brick-and-mortar stores and online retailers across the board. These lists also count all the individual printings of a comic released in 2024. So when I say sales numbers, it's not just the book's first printing, but the aggregate of all of its printings released in 2024, and excluding any printings released in 2025. I'm also not limiting it to one issue per series. So you might see the same book pop up a couple of times because the sales were consistently high. All that being said, take this with a grain of salt, since I had to make some guesstimations based on comics with solid sales numbers and ones that just sold high enough without listing a concrete number. Starting with number 10, we have Ultimate Spider-Man issue 2. The first comic on this list is from Marvel's new Ultimate Universe that kicked off in 2024 and focuses on giving Marvel's marquee characters a fresh start with a twist. As you can probably assume, Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 is higher up on this list, so I'll get into the nitty-gritty about Ultimate Spider-Man when I get to that. If anything, Ultimate Spider-Man issue 2 selling as well as it did demonstrates that the 2024 Ultimate Spider-Man isn't just a flash in the pan, but a comic, an idea with a lot of natural interest and excitement, including for me. This is by far my favorite Spider-Man comic from the past few years. At number 9, we've got X-Men number 1, 2024. With the Krakoa era ending, the X-Men had a wide-line relaunch titled From the Ashes, as the X-Men are spread out across the world, picking up what's left of themselves now that the mutant nation of Krakoa is no more. The last line-wide relaunch for X-Men was the Krakoa era that started all the way back in 2019. So those who just got into comics during the pandemic and were looking for an X-Men entry point seem to have flocked to this. It's also got top-tier talent like writer Jed MacKay and artist Ryan Stegman. I've been reading it through my Marvel Unlimited, and I've enjoyed it. Not enough to pull and pay for it month to month, but enough to read new issues as they pop up. Moving on to number 8, we've got Absolute Wonder Woman number 1. The first of DC's Absolute Universe comics to make this list. As part of DC's All-In initiative, the Absolute Universe attempts to hook new readers by reimagining DC's classic heroes by stripping them of their core elements while keeping their moral cores intact. Wonder Woman is raised by Circe in the underworld instead of the Amazons of Paradise Island. While it's the lowest selling Absolute book on this list, that indicates nothing of its quality. This is the first comic on the list we have concrete-ish numbers for. While we don't have a total sales number for the two printings released in 2024, it is believed that the first printing sold approximately 150,000 copies. If we were looking at 2025 sales, that number only goes higher, as 2025 had a third, fourth, and fifth printing of this comic. It doesn't surprise me that Absolute Wonder Woman resonated with fans as much as it has, myself included. It's a compelling take on the character that I feel does most with the Absolute refresh. At number 7, we have Absolute Batman issue 2. This is the only other comic on the list outside of Ultimate Spider-Man issue 2 that isn't a number 1. Similarly to Ultimate Spider-Man, I'll get into Absolute Batman more when I talk about Absolute Batman number 1 higher on this list. But from this comic being on the list, we can see that of the DC Absolute comics, Absolute Batman is the best performing one from a sales perspective and the one that has the most staying power. Absolute Batman is a banger on the level of Ultimate Spider-Man. Number 6, we have another Absolute book with Absolute Superman issue 1, where he doesn't have the Kents or Fortress of Solitude, leaving him utterly alone. His cape is also made from Krypton's ashes. At time of recording, it's the only Absolute comic I haven't read yet. So I don't have a ton of commentary for this one. Similarly to Absolute Wonder Woman, we have an approximate sales number for the first printing, which is believed to be around 180,000. I would also bet the hype surrounding James Gunn's Superman movie coming out in July of 2025 led people to this book as a jumping on point for people looking to get back into Superman comics before the movie. At number 5, we've got our first non-Big 2 comic with Image Comics' G.I. Joe number 1, reported to have sold around 250,000 copies. This comic release marks the launch of the third tentpole series in Image's Energon universe, run by Robert Kirkman of Invincible and Walking Dead fame. which is what happens when you make a shared comic book universe out of your box of old action figures in the attic. The first two major tentpole releases, Robert Kirkman's original series Void Rivals and Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers, have received a lot of positive buzz and high sales, and as an active reader of Transformers, if G.I. Joe is half as good as that, I see why it sold so well. This is also the first book on the list to really take advantage of retailer variants. What are those? Unlike standard variant covers you can find at any comic book store, retailer variants are store-exclusive variant covers, usually in limited print runs of 1,000 to 2,500, since that's the minimum order amount that these stores have to get in order to make these exclusive variant deals. They usually have a standard version of the retailer exclusive variant and a rarer and pricier textless Virgin variant. Don't ask me why they're called Virgin variants. I don't know, maybe because they're untainted by barcodes or the tagline text or the title logo. Who knows? Retailer variants got really big in 2020 and then petered out across 2021, 2022, and 2023, and are now seeing a resurgence for big name comic releases. Retailer variants are the main reason I needed to pull from multiple sales lists, because the larger comic book stores that carry these retailer exclusives aren't as represented on these local store sales compilation lists. They can be responsible for thousands of sales for a particular comic. In the case of G.I. Joe #1, it had tons of retailer variants from artists like Clayton Crane, Tyler Kirkman, and Jenny Frison, which I'm sure helped ratchet up the sales, with mega fans buying more than one copy of the comic for their collection, or they're weird like me and love framing comics on their wall. Retailer variants are also great ways for non-Big 2 books to reach Big 2 sales numbers. Regardless, the Energon universe is continuing to chug along. But we're not done with non-Big 2 releases yet, because number 4 is IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, which had been reported to sell around 300,000 copies. After a 13-year run, the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic started fresh with a new #1. TMNT #1 is unique in that IDW had a retailer deal with the auction live streaming site Whatnot, where Whatnot pre-purchased 100,000 copies across a plethora of retailer variants. If you thought G.I. Joe had a lot of variants, you ain't seen nothing yet. It could be argued that stuff like the Whatnot deal should be excluded, but I'm counting a sale as a sale. And most of these variants were purchased by customers off of Whatnot, and I'm looking at gross sales numbers, so it counts. Well, this is another comic I haven't read. I don't have too much to say about it personally, but I'm happy to see competition alive and well in comics. Moving back to the big two, Ultimate Spider-Man #1 takes the bronze medal, with estimates putting it at around 350,000 copies sold across its printings in 2024. The ultimate twist is that Peter Parker is happily married with 2 kids before getting his spider powers. What a novel concept! Ultimate Spider-Man proves that you don't need to freeze comic book characters in time in their mid-20s or late 40s to tell compelling stories. I will admit, I am a Zeb Wells Spider-Man disliker. After reading the main Spider-Man comic for 4 years, I dropped it after reading the first couple arcs of Wells' run, with no plans of going back to the main universe Spider-Man comic, because Ultimate Spider-Man is everything I never knew I needed. This is to say nothing of Marco Cicchetto's stunning artwork, which alone is worth the price of admission. It is the comic that has left my jaw dropped the most this past year. There's even a 1-month in-world time gap between each issue, which is just chef's kiss. Based on this book's reception, I'm far from the only one who feels this way. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this issue also had a ton of retailer variants, which I imagine helped bump the sales. But the hype for this book is all natural. My local comic book store struggled to keep the first few issues of Ultimate Spider-Man on shelves due to the sheer demand. The success of this book sent a clear message to the big two, and I hope they take it and continue to iterate on it. The silver medal of sales goes to Absolute Batman #1, with an astounding 400,000 copies sold. The Batman who lifts does not have the money or resources of the Batman we are used to. Instead of the Waynes being billionaire tech moguls, they're a working class family, and Bruce grows up to be in construction and engineering, having to get creative with his tech, Batcaves, and Batmobiles. With Batman legend Scott Snyder returning to write with Nick Dragotta on art, it's the full talent package. Like the rest of the Fresh Start reimagining comics on this list, it does an awesome job at making Batman feel new. And it's also a great entry point for a prolific creator like Snyder if you're looking to get into his plethora of Batman comics or non-Batman comics. I've been loving this book, and I'm excited to see how the first arc wraps up in a couple weeks as of recording. Considering how fast the first printing sold out, these sales numbers do not surprise me. It was a once-a-decade phenomenon. If you did not pull list Absolute Batman #1 or head down to your local comic book store on the day of release, it was either gone or marked up to $20 to $30. This is the kind of nonsense you get with Pokemon cards, not comic books. It's gotten another 5 printings since, and if you want it, you can get your hands on it. But the sheer excitement around Absolute Batman is impossible to ignore. But wait, I hear some of you commenting. DC said that Absolute Batman #1 was the highest selling comic book of 2024. So how can it only be #2? Did they lie? Not really, because the #1 best-selling comic of 2024 was Dogman Book 12, The Scarlet Shedder, with 1.2 million copies sold. Okay. While Dogman is a comic, I, along with I imagine many of you, wouldn't consider it in the same bracket as a single issue comic book. This is closer to a children's graphic novel. So, while the power of Captain Underpants creating Dave Pilkey is undeniable, what is it doing on this list? I had the same question. By the looks of it, Scarlet Shedder was accidentally lumped into some of the databases I used for this video and counted as a comic book. Could I have just taken it out of this list? Yes. But I thought it was funny, and considering how much DC has been yelling from the rooftops, Absolute Batman is the #1 comic of 2024, I wanted to throw off the scent a little bit. And to fill the gap left by Dogman, Uncanny X-Men #1 would be the new #10 if I were to take Dogman out of the list. Just copy-paste everything else I said about X-Men #1 here for my analysis. So, that's the top 10 highest-selling comic book issues of 2024. Now, what can we take from this, and how do I think it will impact the comic book industry going forward? As for what worked, basically all of the comic books on this list are entry points in some way, most of which for new fresh start universes like Absolute, Ultimate, or Energon. While I was originally going to leave it at people yearn for easy entry points and new stories, which is true, I wanted to dig a bit deeper. In Scott Snyder's newsletter, when he was explaining why he thought all of these books were as successful and as sales-worthy as they were, was mostly due to the fact that Absolute, Ultimate, and Energon are a shared comic and cultural moment that everyone can share in. It's not just one new book, but a whole horizontal line of comics that exist together and you can explore from a bunch of different angles. Using Marvel's Ultimate Universe as an example, Spider-Man is a very grounded and personal story that alludes to greater powers at work outside of New York. But if you find that interesting, you can pick up Ultimates and get a broader picture of the world, rewarding you for engaging with as much of the universe as you can while making it as easy as possible to do so. When you look back at the reaction to Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, the part people look back on most fondly is this shared cultural moment, and feel like that's what the MCU of today has lost. That potential for new shared cultural moments is surrounding so much of the excitement surrounding Superman in the new DCU. It's been a few years since Endgame, but it finally feels like the comic book industry has found a way, phenomenally at that, to distill that cultural moment essence and bringing people together into their comics. This isn't exclusive to fresh start universes either. I mean, look at X-Men's From the Ashes. It's possible in mainline books too. While non-superhero comics are gaining a lot of traction, specifically with awards, they haven't found a way to grab the attention of the masses or mainstream yet. But with more people getting into superhero comics as a whole, I think we're going to start seeing more people trickling into non-superhero comics, which I think will lead to more growth in that kind of independent non-superhero space. Additionally, retailer variants are back on the menu to an extent. It seems like they found their groove, a balance between 15 retailer variants per issue that led to the original Burnout and nothing at all, by doing a ton of retailer variants for huge #1 or tentpole releases. Going into 2025, I think we're going to see cultivation and expansion of these already successful cultural moments, like we already are seeing with the Absolute Universe with Absolute Flash, Martian Manhunter, and Green Lantern. And the Ultimate Universe has got Ultimate Wolverine and their first crossover event coming with Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion. I also believe we're going to see more support for these kind of cultural moment jumping on universes in the future. Bringing back Scott Snyder's newsletter, he mentioned a timeline of about every 1 to 2 years. This is already being proven in main lines too. We have already been confirmed we are getting a new Batman #1 this year, and it is heavily rumored we are going to get a new Superman #1 to line up with the Superman movie. Captain America is also getting a brand new #1. DC has already announced that Jeff Loeb's and Jim Lee's Batman number 158, the first issue of the new Hush 2 storyline, / the last story before this new number 1 relaunches, already has 400,000 copies printed and sold to comic book stores, with midnight launch parties announced. Now, how much of those 400,000 will actually sell? We'll see. Will it garner the same fervor as Absolute Batman number 1? That's yet to be seen. But I think 2025 will be the start of a modern comic renaissance. And I can't wait to see what sells like hotcakes this year. Thanks for watching. If you got anything from this video, make sure to like and subscribe and or comment to give me your feedback so I know to make more stuff like this. And I hope you have a wonderful day.